Welcome back to Kari's Confessions, a nonprofit exec tells all, your go to podcast for nonprofit leadership insights, crisis management tips, and best practices that help you build an organization that's resilient, effective, and ready for anything. I'm your host, Kari Anderson, principal with Incite Consulting. I spent 25 years in the nonprofit sector in leadership roles with 7 organizations. Now, I provide coaching and consulting services to ensure that nonprofits like yours have the structure, systems, and practices to do your best work. Wherever I go, I continue to hear that nonprofit execs need a space to gather, to receive tools, feedback, and advice that encourages them to stay the course. It doesn't matter if you're in a village of 182 or a metropolis of millions, nonprofit work is both gratifying and lonely. I'm here to make sure that you have a chance to breathe, laugh, smirk, nod, get excited again about the important work that you do. Today's episode is all about crisis leadership, specifically lessons learned from leaders who've navigated or are navigating through tough times, and the best practices that you can start today in whatever role you have at your organization. From transformative leadership to emotional intelligence, we'll cover it all. I'd say here are the 3 takeaways from today's podcast. We're going to talk about traits of transformative leaders, developing leadership at your organization, regardless of size or budget or who's running what, right? Board, volunteer, or staff, and the role of emotional intelligence in today's leaders. So let's dive in. So I want to start with talking about transformational leadership. In 2025, this style is more important than ever, especially during a crisis. A transformational leader is someone who inspires change, something that we're often scared of, right? A transformational leader motivates their team and helps them see the bigger picture, even when we're mired in the nitty gritty of just trying to stay afloat, right? Think of leaders who've led organizations through major disruptions or social change. They just don't react, they transform the challenges into opportunities. So, what makes transformational leaders stand out? One, they're visionary. Transformational leaders have a clear and inspiring future in mind. Transformational leaders are empathetic. They understand the challenges their team faces, whether you are a small and mighty team of 2 or a team of 2,000. Transformational leaders are innovative. They find creative solutions to complex problems. So here's a myth we need to bust right away. Transformational leaders are born, not made. No, no, no. The truth is, with the right mindset and development, anyone can cultivate transformational leadership skills, especially when crisis strikes. We all need more transformational leaders in this sector. So, there are certain styles of leadership that thrive in crisis situations. I want to dig a little more into that. So, during a crisis, it's not about rigidly sticking to one style, it's about adapting the leadership style to meet the emergent need that you have right now, right? Some leadership styles that work well in high pressure situations include situational leadership. So, what does that look like? Where you adjust your style based on the needs of your team and the situation. Um, Times of crisis often call for servant leadership, leaders who prioritize the needs of others and help them grow. Sometimes times of crisis require healthy, authoritative leadership. So, a decisive, clear direction, especially when time is of the essence and there's lots of data out there, right? Sometimes we end up in an analysis paralysis during times of crisis. That's where authoritative leadership, in terms of making a decision, right, is critically important. But here's the myth to debunk with regard to all styles of leadership: you can only lead with one style. Crisis leadership requires flexibility. Great leaders know how to switch between styles based on what's needed in the moment, right? So I think back to my time in the field, and we took all these different surveys and tests about what type of leader you are. And I always netted out with several, right? And it turns out now I understand why, right? I'm just not wedded to one. I've got this ability to flex back and forth between several based on the situation we're in. And I'm grateful that a mentor pointed that out to me, that that was okay, right? So when I'm thinking about leadership and how to build a leadership development program in your organization. And again, it doesn't matter how large or how small your organization is. We are in the sector of people, right? We deal in human capital, and it's our job, whether you're a board leader or board chair, right, or whether you're a staff leader, executive director, that we are building our team. So our job is to develop leaders in our organization, again, regardless of size or budget. And many organizations only think about this when things are going wrong. But the truth is, you need leadership pipeline in place long before crisis hits, right? Building a leadership development program is essential. And again, regardless of the size of your organization, here's what it should include. So, skills based training is where things start, right? Being able to prepare your team to handle various crises, whether that is food delivery, whether that's actually making sure that payroll occurs, whether that's making sure that documents, right, and reports are given to the right folks to make sure you get your grant, right? And the type of planning in terms of leadership needs to revolve around succession planning. Who can step up if a particular leader is unavailable? In the not so olden days, we used to call this buzz proofing, right? But that truly was making sure that there was a written plan that said, hey, if I am unable to be at the office because of an accident or illness, who can run point on different aspects of my position to make sure that mission is still delivered? Succession planning is also critical for your board, right? Making sure that not only board committees have the leadership they need to run efficiently and effectively, but that people on your board can actually see themselves stepping into an officer role at your organization. So, another particular leadership development piece is crisis management training, especially if you are in the business of delivering program or services to your clients or stakeholders. So, running through some real life scenarios to prep for the unexpected, right? And here's the ultimate myth that we're trying to debunk, that leadership development is just for executives. No, a strong leadership program should be available at all levels of your organization. And again, it doesn't matter how small or how large. Everyone benefits from learning crisis management skills, right? There's an adage that hope is not a strategy. And when I'm thinking about when that's been used with me in the past, it is better to map things out, right? Oftentimes there's panic because we feel like we have no control. But if we've been able to map out scenarios, whether it has to do with budget or program or fundraising, right, or program delivery, ideally you never have to use those scenarios, but you've actually done the if then thinking that accompanies them. So when I'm thinking about leadership at your organizations, I also think about transparency and how that's a part of effective leadership. When a crisis strikes, one of the most important things you can do as a leader is to be transparent. Transparency isn't about sharing everything, right? It's about sharing the right information at the right time. When leaders are open and honest with their teams, it builds trust. And trust is what you need to be able to weather any storm. Here's a critical point. Effective communication during a crisis is not about controlling the narrative. It's about sharing the truth, even when it's hard. So the myth I'm trying to bust here: in crisis situations, leaders need to control the narrative at all cost. It's not true. Transparency helps unite your team and it builds resilience. When I'm thinking about leadership development in 2025, well, we've got some resources, right? Again, doesn't matter whether you're all volunteer led and working on your first budget ever, or whether you're a little more seasoned and sophisticated, there are a bunch of tools out there right now that can help you develop leadership skills. Some of the resources that I recommend to clients, there's online courses from everything from Coursera and the Harvard Business School. There's books on leadership and specifically crisis leadership, like Leading Through Crisis and the Leadership Challenge. There's a host of conferences and webinars, often free, that are tailored to nonprofit leadership development, and blogs and podcasts and mentorship programs, right? My encouragement for all of you is that you need to lean in and actually have this as a part of the conversation and narrative at your organization. The myth to bust that leadership training doesn't work in the real world. Oh, it does, right? With the right mindset and application, leadership development, again, it doesn't matter the mission of your organization, the size of the organization, where you're geographically located, what your budget, right? Leadership development absolutely translates to real world success, especially in a crisis. So, crisis leadership, right? There's key traits in great nonprofit leaders. And this translates after the crisis, right, into periods of calm. There are a few key traits that great leaders must have, right? Resilience. Great leaders can recover from setbacks. We all have them, right? We're in the business of humans. There's always going to be a setback. Great leaders engage in strategic thinking. They keep the organization's long-term goals in mind, even when we're the ones having to clean the toilet that day, right? Adaptability. Great leaders stay flexible in uncertain times. Empathy. Great leaders understand their team's struggles and challenges. Take a moment to ask yourself, are you a great nonprofit leader? Do you have one or more of these traits? If you don't, are you interested in developing them, right? The myth I'm trying to bust today is nonprofit leaders don't need to be bold or outspoken. But in a crisis, boldness is often what saves the day. So, how do you start building your leadership bench at your organization? Building the bench is essential, right? And it doesn't matter, again, whether you've got the formative board of 3 individuals or whether you finally moved into a space where you can hire your first executive director. Building that bench means identifying and nurturing future leaders within your organization. Those could be volunteers, those could be junior staff, could be a brand new board director. We just don't wait until there's a crisis to start thinking about the need for leadership. To start building your leadership bench, if you got staff, you got to mentor them, right? And offer leadership opportunities for them as well. Leadership does not require a certain title in your organization. Anyone can be a leader. Cross-train employees. Again, if we're lucky enough to have employees, we've got an obligation to cross-train so they can step up when and if they're needed. Look for leadership potential even in unexpected places. And here's another myth that I'm going to bust. Great leaders can only come from outside the organization. Not true. Some of your best leaders are already within your organization. We just need to cultivate and identify them. So, one of the last pieces I'd like to share with you today is the role of emotional intelligence in our modern leadership, right? Emotional intelligence, or EQ, is the ability to understand and manage your own emotions and to understand and influence the emotions of others. In a crisis, emotional intelligence is crucial. It helps leaders stay calm under pressure, connect with their team, and make thoughtful decisions on behalf of the organization. The myth to bust here: emotional intelligence is soft and doesn't affect business outcomes. That couldn't be further from the truth. EQ is a powerful leadership tool, and research shows that it plays a key role in successful leadership, especially during crisis. All right, friends, that's all for today's episode. We've covered a lot, from leadership styles to emotional intelligence to the importance of building a leadership pipeline before crisis strikes. In closing, crisis leadership is about adaptability, transparency, emotional intelligence, and building the right systems before you need them. Remember today's takeaways: the traits of transformative leaders, developing leadership at your organization, and the role of emotional intelligence in today's leaders. If you're ready to step up your leadership game, start by reflecting on these traits and practices. And as always, if you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others who need to hear it. Make sure to follow me on your favorite streaming platforms, including YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. Many of you now know that I'm no longer on Facebook or Instagram. Yep, I'm only using online platforms that work for me. So additional resources can be found by following me on LinkedIn and also checking out my website at inciteconsultinggroup.com. Until next time, keep leading with resilience and vision. Thanks for tuning in to Kari's Confessions. Have a great week.